Hey, what is up guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video I'm going to bring you some brand new F1 2022 gameplay. I just wanted to basically test out the new Miami Grand Prix circuit and basically ended up having a big whole race battle with Max Verstappen for the lead in wet conditions. A pretty awesome race. So yeah, a pretty memorable start to seeing that track in the Formula 1 games. So that's the intro done. I'm going to let the broadcast and such play, and then I'll get back to talking when that is all done.
Formula One has arrived in the Sunshine State for spectacular sunsets, gentle breezes, warm waters, and for what will be a fantastic race day here at the Miami International Autodrome. Well, it's certainly not sunny here in the Sunshine State. A lap of the Miami Grand Prix features 19 corners and 3.36 miles of track around the Hard Rock Stadium. But these conditions should prove especially difficult for all of our drivers today. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Perez, Sainz, George Russell, and Hamilton, Magnussen, Joe, Ocon, and Valtteri Bottas, Fernando Alonso, Tsunoda, Pierre Gasly, and Mick Schumacher, Stroll, Latifi, Alex Albon, and Lando Norris. Vettel and Daniel Ricciardo fills the last spot on the grid. And with lights out just moments away, it's time to go down to the track. Well, it's not going to be plain sailing for our drivers today, although with the sky falling as it is, perhaps sailing isn't too far from the truth. Anthony Davidson could be a wet one today. Great to have you with us. What are your thoughts?
It is a touch damp, isn't it? Well, as a driver, there are three big things to worry about when racing in these kind of conditions: standing water, tyre temperature, and visibility. And judging distance to the cars around you is really tricky when you're driving through the vast amounts of spray that these wet weather predators.
Right then, the formation lap has started. And I must say, the weather conditions aren't the best today for visibility and for grip. As each driver performs this lap, they'll be wanting to settle in and concentrate, as this race, in these conditions, will require a lot of focus. We're almost ready to start the race as the cars take their positions on the grid, with the drivers and teams making their final preparations.
So as you can see, we've managed to line up on pole. It was completely random grid order. We've got Verstappen behind us, so I'm expecting a pretty tough battle. Did get a pretty okay start, kind of bogged down a bit. Verstappen's going to try and get it up the inside, but I'm just going to, manage to hold off for now. The Ferrari itself, very good in the corners, but trust me, that Red Bull is an absolute bullet on the straights. Verstappen just pretty much uncatchable. That's going to be a hint for later on in the race. But yeah, overall I just kind of wanted to get a feel for the track, and it put me in wet conditions. So yeah, kind of surprising. I expected a nice sunny race, but nope, we didn't get that here. We basically got a nice wet soggy race, but it did produce some really good racing. Didn't see too much of the rest of the AI. I know at the start they're kind of hanging in there. But as the race went on, it pretty much ended up being a battle between myself and Max for the win. Just a heads up, I am sorry about the driver line. Obviously, never raced this track before, so I did kind of want to keep that on so I kind of know where I'm going. Seeing it on the TV, it doesn't sort of hit the same as when you're actually, on the game and driving. So lap 1 I'm managing to hold on, but you're soon going to see just, you know, the pace advantage down the straights that the Red Bull has, because Max is going to try and put it up the inside. He does back out on this lap, but yeah, it's pretty worrying straight away when you've got that Red Bull pretty much straight on you, and obviously you've got the big long, you know, straight at the end of the lap. So yeah, I was pretty much in panic mode. Obviously I'm just trying to get a feel for the car. Obviously the cars are completely different this year. They do feel very, very different. Just a heads up, if you are, you know, a controller player, I was using a controller here, and it's okay, but it is just very, very different feeling from, you know, previous F1 games. I'd 100% recommend using a wheel and pedals when it comes to this game. It feels a bit less, I don't know, I'd say accessible than before. I feel like the other games weren't too bad on controller, especially F1 2020. That was pretty much perfect when it came to being, you know, on a controller. F1 2021 was okay, but the cars were, you know, a lot more loose and more prone to spinning. These cars, I just don't know what it is. It just feels a bit sort of strange. I feel like it's something I'm going to have to adapt to, you know, going forward, because they feel a lot stiffer. I just feel like they're a lot later to turn in. So yeah, it's just kind of something I'm going to have to work out as, you know, the year goes on and I get more and more used to F1 2022. Obviously we've just hit the curb a little bit hard then. As you can see, we picked up a bit of damage. Obviously these cars are known for not being very good over the curbs, and it kind of feels that way. You do really get a good FUD through like vibrations and such when you run them. As you can see, Max is going to try and put it past me. Is he going to manage to hold on this time? I'm just going to try and brake a little bit later, try and, you know, get the cut back on him, but no, he's going to manage to sort of, you know, block me off there and defend it. And this is where just the acceleration and the speed of the Red Bull is just absolutely incredible, really. It kind of blew me away. Obviously I'm trying to get my power down, and that thing just shot off. So as you can see now, it's all, you know, it's just a case of me trying to get that position back. You know, at first I did feel like I had quite a few rough laps, but you do kind of like get used to it. You know, once you've done a few laps in, you've got used to the layout and such. It does feel much, you know, better lap by lap. In the end, I did manage to get the fastest lap, but at the start it was basically me and Verstappen just battling lap by lap for the fastest lap. But in the end I did manage to sort of take that away from him. So as you can see, I've just not got a pace advantage when it comes to, you know, straight line speed and acceleration. That Red Bull just bolting out of the corners. So I'm trying to stay in the slipstream. Obviously no DRS, it's far too wet for that. So I'm just trying to basically use the corners to my advantage. As you can see, this corner that I've just took there did kind of go into the back of him. I did notice, like throughout the race, that was sort of like the thorn in my side, that braking zone there. I did, you know, I was either braking too early or too late. Most of the time a little bit too late, and it really does sort of upset your balance going into that corner. Obviously if you miss it, you're in for it, you know, a bad time going into that really slow section. But as you can see, Verstappen again just pulling and pulling on the straight. I'm trying to sort of stay in the slipstream and hope to God I can maybe outbrake him and such, but he's just far too in front at this point. And again, he's just going to get that insane acceleration from the Red Bull, getting the power down and just launching away, basically just leaving me as a sitting duck. That's basically where I lost the majority of the time. Round the corners, the Ferrari felt quite good. As I said, as I was getting used to it, it felt better and better lap by lap. Obviously I'm finding where the grip is and finding that I can basically touch the curbs, sort of the smaller curbs, and not spin this year round. But obviously that big curb, it did obviously knock the rear spoiler. So I'm not really sure what happened there. I don't know if it was DRS was broke or what. Obviously DRS not in use for this race, so I never actually really found out. I didn't have my engineer really say anything to me either. So this is where I just genuinely really found that I was much quicker through like the slower sections. Found that that's where I was sort of making ground up. But then once you get used to this sort of layout of how Miami works, it just seems to be you've got a couple of slower sections and more twisty sections, but then all of a sudden there'll just be a really big, you know, long straight, So basically all the time I made up I was just losing again, and I was kind of hoping for either a mistake, a little bit of a slip, where I could kind of maybe just get the car down the inside and maybe then just try and hold off. But obviously I know at this point, I know every time, even if I got in front at this point, he'll basically just eat me up on the straights, and then I'm left defending. Obviously I'm not going to defend too hard to the point where it's either going to damage my car or Max's car. So yeah, at this point I'm just kind of trying to figure out strategy. I know that it's going to rain throughout the whole race at this point, so I'm thinking, well, I haven't got DRS to make it up, so he's just going to really pull on them straights. You know, what am I going to do? Where am I going to find time? And basically for a few laps I was trying to brake a little bit later than maybe I should have done. It did cause me to basically overshoot a couple of corners. One thing to note as well with this game is traction control. I did keep it on, obviously, while I'm just getting used to the game. But it's really kind of slow. It really does seem to bog down quite a bit more than I'd say the previous games. So in the previous games it wasn't really too noticeable, but I feel like it's much more noticeable if you have traction on in this game. I believe it's like corner 3 and 4 on this track. You can really just hear the engine starting to bog down, and then basically all it requires really is you to sort of loosen off your turning angle, and basically the car will just, you know, take off. But yeah, that is kind of one thing I did kind of realise. The damage model, I didn't really get to see much of that. There was obviously a yellow flag throughout this race, which I will point out a little bit later. So obviously we had yellow flag, there was no safety car, so I don't know if there was really any incidents going on behind me. Basically I was just far too focused on you know, this little battle I was having with Max. As the race went on and on, I mean, like you can see, within a few laps we're starting to drop Perez and Sainz, and basically the rest of the cars. It just seemed like there was this group of cars and then the rest were just really sort of nowhere. So I don't know like how they're working out the performance. I don't know if they're going off from performance at the start of the year, or if they're going off current performance. I'm not quite sure. I believe when you jump on the game it does sort of update to current performance and such. Obviously they usually change this throughout the year, so who knows. But yeah, I mean, I have kind of seen the Mercedes line up on pole at a couple of other tracks and such, so I don't really know what's going on there. It's sort of a bit all over the place, so who knows with that. As you can see, I'm a little bit close to that time, and I'm going to try and like hold on to, you know, a bit of slipstream, but again, just far too much straight line speed and acceleration in that Red Bull. So one thing to note as well, I don't know if you'd notice yourself, but it basically just seems a little bit more kind of full on when you put it in the broadcast mode. I feel like there's more sort of animation to the drivers, if that makes sense. In previous years they felt quite stiff and a little bit bland. It just feels like, you know, when it's going through the official drivers and such, there's just a little bit sort of more to it and a little bit more detail, where, you know, that's something for me personally I feel like F1 has, you know, kind of lacked throughout the years. I do still think, you know, character models and such are still kind of outdated graphically. They just don't quite look right, and for a 2022 game it's, you know, not really that great. Obviously EA now taking charge. I was kind of hoping maybe when it came to animations they'd get, you know, the people, get maybe the guys in from FIFA, or kind of use that engine just purely for the animations. But who knows. Yeah, it just feels a little bit dated in there. In game it just feels a lot, I guess, smoother. It looks a lot smoother than 2021. Obviously for this here I've got it set to quality, so this is like, you know, max graphic quality and such. I believe performance mode will probably feel like a lot smoother with your frames and such. I haven't noticed any drops yet. The only thing I kind of noticed was a few errors when loading into events and such. Hopefully they're just usually ironed out within a couple of weeks, so hopefully they'll get on top of that. But like I said, back to the race. This is pretty much how it's going to be for the whole race. Just, you know, battling Verstappen, trying to play him in his own game. and try and get him in the corners. As you can see, that is the first yellow flag we're going to get when we go around the next lap. With Latifi being out, I was hoping it would be like a safety car deployment and such, but yeah, no such luck there. I didn't get to quite see the broadcast mode of the safety car. It basically just ended up being Latifi parked on the runoff areas, pretty much out the way, but still just yellow flag deployed. So it's pretty cool to see that obviously the engine faults or gearbox faults etc. still put people out of the race. Obviously I'm still yet to see the AI mistakes. I know that's something that's been kind of talked about, is like the AI is a bit more dynamic, they'll hit each other, they'll spin and such. So who knows, I'm yet to see it. You're sadly not going to get to see it in this gameplay. I'm hoping to get more time with the game and kind of showcase those in the future. Maybe something cool would be like just to sort of put a compilation together of sort of like AI mistakes and such. Obviously Codemasters and EA made this game. As you can see, there's the yellow flag area. So yeah, sorry. So Codemasters and EA again working together with this game. Obviously EA having their input, very stylized like FIFA now. I basically said that since I first saw the few trailers. It feels very FIFA-y in the sort of presentation style. Still feels like an F1 game though when you're past the menus and loading into a race and such. But yeah, obviously if you have ever played Grid Legends, the AI makes quite a few mistakes and they really do hit each other, go spinning, go flying and such. But I don't think it's as extreme as that when it comes to F1 2022. But I have heard like a lot of talk around like the driver errors and such. But like I said, I mean, I'm yet to see that. So on to lap 8 now, and I'm still just sort of hanging in there. We are really, pretty much just dropping the rest of the field at this point. It's pretty much just me and Max battling for first place. Perez and Sainz sort of having their own battle, and then obviously the two Mercedes pretty close by to those pair, but sort of on their own at the same time, and the rest of the field's just pretty much nowhere. Yeah, it just pretty much ends up going this way for a while now. Obviously I'm just setting a new best lap there quite far in. Tyre degradation, it kind of started feeling a bit funny around about lap 10. Definitely the rear felt like it was slipping a bit more, but overall not really massively noticeable in this race. No pit stop required, obviously the wet weather and such. So it was just kind of a case of nobody took a pit stop. It was just kind of hoping and praying for a safety car to kind of bring us back together really, and hoping I could just sort of jump him on a restart. But obviously, as you can see, that Red Bull is a bullet in the game just like it is in real life, so it's very difficult to kind of keep up with it in the straight sections. And like I said, I'm just kind of trying to plan out where I can maybe just late brake, and I'm constantly trying to push the limits, but just no such luck. I'm always just that little bit too far back when it comes to obviously the braking zones, and I'm just not getting enough time through here though. I don't know if it was just me, but the AI did seem like quite weak here. Very, very F1 like AI. Basically they'll be quite poor through the slower sections, and then all of a sudden on the straights they're just there with you. And they, to be honest, they're quite aggressive. They have been for the last few years. Older F1 titles, it was quite soft on you. They wouldn't even try and attempt to really make an overtake unless you made a mistake. But yeah, it seems like they're quite happy to sort of battle side by side with you in this. As you can see, in the first few laps, Verstappen was quite happy to try and get it up the inside, and then yeah, they do seem to still have that thing where they back out, which is a little bit frustrating. It'd be kind of nice for them to possibly push a little bit too hard and maybe hit you. I know it's kind of sucky when it happens in like more competitive races, but if you're kind of doing what I'm doing here and getting used to the game, to see the AI acting like so dynamic and making those mistakes even when it comes to you and not just kind of hanging at the back of you, it's kind of awesome to see. But yeah, I mean the AI, they don't seem too different from last year. It kind of was all the talk about the AI is a bit more dynamic. Like I said, that just seems to be when it comes to incidents and such. I haven't seen a major step up in, you know, how they'll battle with you wheel to wheel. Again, they do seem like the usual, quite slow in the slower sectors, really fast on the straights. So, you know, single player wise, do I think it's going to be, you know, a strong F1 game? I think if you've played probably, I'd say, the last couple of years, you know, maybe 2020, 2021, it's going to be pretty much the, you know, the same really when it comes to the AI and battling throughout the year in, you know, my team and career mode and such, whichever you want to go against. I don't feel like we're going to see kind of much change there. It's going to feel pretty similar, but I do feel like, you know, the added mistakes and, you know, the way the safety car comes out, and obviously self-control pit stops, lining up on the grid and all that. I mean, that'd be kind of cool, and, you know, it just takes that one mistake to kind of shake up the grid and get penalties and such. So I guess there's kind of that more dynamic feature in your career modes and such, but obviously I haven't really dived into that just yet. The main thing I kind of want to focus on is possibly a co-op career. I'm not sure how it works in this game. I'm not even quite sure if it's still in there, but hopefully it is, and it's something I can kind of get to grips with and enjoy. I mean, my team's cool, but I feel like there's not been enough kind of changes around it for me to be really drawn towards that, you know, for a third year I believe it is now. It was, you know, it was pretty cool in 2020, it was pretty cool in 21, but now I just feel like there's not been enough kind of implemented and added to make it like a massive standout feature. I got the supercars and such and safety cars and that, but again, for me it just doesn't, you know, really faze me too much. For me, if I want to, you know, test out those supercars and such, I'll just kind of take them into time trials and such, and, you know, kind of use them there. I'm not overly bothered when it comes to, you know, my team and such and invitational events. But who knows, I might change my mind. But overall, I mean, if this is kind of how the gameplay is, I'm happy for it to be this way. I'm happy to see the AI is, you know, like I said, quite strong. Once they're past you, obviously, they seem to be very good at kind of like defending and putting the car in the right place. But again, that's kind of track dependent. I mean, I did find that Miami was quite a difficult track to overtake on. You know, obviously you've got your long straights, but then when it comes to the corners, they're quite, I'd say, I wouldn't necessarily say narrow, I'd say that, you know, they're a bit awkward to kind of like put your car up the inside, especially if you're a little bit too far back. Do I think this race will be, you know, any good online? I feel like it'll be pretty chaotic. There's a few really awkward sectors, and I can see that really slow sector with them, you know, huge curves and that being a massive sort of choke point and a bunch of players kind of piling up. But, you know, who knows? I am kind of thinking of jumping into multiplayer. I do feel like that's where I'm going to spend most of my time when it comes to this game. But like I said, I mean, you know, co-op career, you know, multiplayer lobbies, it's kind of always been the draw when it comes to F1 for me. And then obviously now and again I'll put like full length race on with like full weekend format and such. I do find that quite enjoyable to do, but I mean, for me, I don't know if it's just myself. I mean, you guys can let me know, but I do feel quite, I guess, burnt out on sort of the my team thing. I'd feel like it's just not had enough major changes, I guess, to really draw me back in. But I mean, I probably will go back in eventually. Who knows? I'm going to assume that obviously you still got drivers that will retire, driving moves and such. I mean, that's always pretty cool to see, you know, where people end up. Overall, what do I think, you know, about the whole cars in general? I know I kind of sort of touched on them, but when it comes to like the models and such, I kind of feel like they are very, you know, nicely detailed, very, you know, pretty good to look at. Even the supercars, again, very well detailed, nice interiors and such. I do feel like there's been a little bit of a jump from 2021. Obviously, you know, we're a couple of years into these newer consoles now, but for me, I wouldn't say it's the best looking racing game going. I feel like, you know, things such as Gran Turismo 7 and, you know, the new Forza when that drops will be definitely, you know, the bar to hit when it comes to on consoles. Obviously on PC it's completely different. Assetto Corsa still being a standout game, especially with mods. You can get some insanely realistic looking racing on there when it comes to that. But anyway, sorry, I don't want to, go too much off topic. This is F1 2022. It's brand new, and I'm just kind of, as well as talking about the race, wanting to sort of give you my thoughts. Yeah, I feel like it'll be an enjoyable year, but I do feel like there's a big sort of step you're going to have to make when it comes to kind of getting used to the cars and such. Again, the completely different new regulations. And I feel like we're going to have to, a lot of us are going to have to change the way that we drive. I mean, I used to be, I'd say, very competitive back in the day when it came to like 2020 especially. I felt like I was very good at that game. But coming into this, I'd feel like it's a completely different ball game, and they've kind of nailed, the way the cars feel. So the aspect of the cars changing and the way the handling feels and getting new regulations right, I feel like they're spot on, and it's going to cause a lot of players to spend that little bit extra time kind of getting used to the cars in general. So that's my overall kind of initial thoughts. I didn't want to just bore you with constantly commentating over this race really. It was just more of a sort of showcase and initial impressions, and I'm impressed. I am kind of excited for this year when it comes to F1, and obviously getting to use these new generation really of cars is going to be awesome. And obviously, as for the race, itself, pretty cool little battle to be able to sort of battle with the AI constantly throughout the whole race and not really just dropping back into no man's land. Did feel pretty good. So for me, that's an improvement, because sometimes you'd either just absolutely go away from the AI, or you'd end up, they'd drop you and you'd be kind of in no man's land. So yeah, I mean, it's nice to basically just have sustained battles on track, and I hope this is kind of what it's going to be like in the future really for this game. As you can see, I'm pretty much just trying to push as much as I can and put some last ditch move in, but it's just not looking likely. Sadly, he's just pulling again on the straight as we're coming up to the final corner. So as you can see, I'm just a little bit too far back. I'm trying to brake as late as I can, and he's just going to bolt away. So that is going to be the end of the race. Honestly, thank you so much for watching. I will let the outro and that play, the podium celebrations. But yeah, thanks for joining me on my first proper F1 2022 video. Cheers guys, I'll see you later.
Then a phenomenal Miami Grand Prix, and what a great show of skill from our race winners today. What do you think it was today, Ant, that gave them the edge over the competition?
Well, they clearly have a car that comes alive in the kind of conditions we were dealing with today. It's a very balanced package in the wet, and what that means is that the drivers have confidence to attack. And having that confidence gets you on the power earlier, it lets you brake later, and can put you a long way up the road.
Here come today's winners. The team at Red Bull have done a phenomenal job recently, and it's clear to see that they've put in the work, and they should be so proud of the victory they secured here.